What do I like? How do I want to show up? Is this who I am? How do I identify? Where do I want to go? Do I want to do this? This is Dear Obio. All right, so we left off on this question, so I figured we'll pick back up from here. The question says, thank you for being out here as not just a regular gay man, but fellow same gender loving alpha. I'm curious about your path to love. I don't want to intrude. I think we came to the conclusion that they meant intrude. I don't want to intrude on your current love story. I'm excited about what you're sharing. I more so want to know, how did you navigate getting here? You mentioned the DL phase, etc. Would love to hear that. Definitely can't wait for the book. You might not have to wait much longer for the book, but that's a story for another day. I think my DL phase is necessary to highlight because, like most people, my past colors my present, right? And I think I didn't know how much of a, I was about to say stain, how much of a journey I would be on because of the journey of my DL phase, if you will. I often say if I had to go through my DL phase again, I would, to end up where I am. But I do wonder if it was necessary, you know? And I don't think that shame is ever necessarily necessary as much as some things that you go through, you really do grow through. I struggle to qualify my DL phase as necessary because I think about, you know, is shame necessary, or do we just end up in good perspective that qualifies the experience? Like, my DL phase taught me a lot about myself and a lot about the world around me, but I think some of it was avoidable, you know? I think that, let's just get real. I think there is some things that I was protected from while being closeted, in the sense of, the gay community is definitely changing, but when I was younger, there was a lot of people who were predatory, right? There was a lot of people who preyed on younger guys who, you know, just would make you feel comfortable to then make you feel uncomfortable. And I think because I was DL, I skipped a lot of the heartbreak stuff, you know, because I was very aware that this is not real. And so I think when you're comfortable in your skin, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have language to qualify how to be comfortable in your skin. You know what I'm saying? So you're young and you're out, cool, but who are your mentors? How do you feel seen and heard? What are you supposed to do with that outness, right? What are you supposed to do with it? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? Who do you confide in? What does dating look like? What is healthy? What is not healthy? Is it monogamous? Is it not monogamous? You have all these questions that I think can be daunting, you know? And I think for me, because I was closeted, I didn't really give my heart to people for real. It was like, that wasn't what I'm here for. You know what I'm saying? And I think because of that, I was able to skip some of the heartbreak stuff, the manipulation stuff, but I skipped it only to then join a different herd of people, right? Where I'm dealing with people who are narcissists, liars. I'm sneaking in environments that are really unsafe. I'm around people I do not trust. I don't even really know you from Adam, but because I'm closeted, no one can even know that I don't know you, right? So I'm, you know, with someone who's basically a stranger, and not only are you a stranger, but you're a stranger in my totality. Like, no one even, there's no record of us interacting because of the means that we go through to interact, if that makes any sense. And so the danger parts and the anxiety around that. So again, whatever. But I think all in all, what shame kind of taught me was, and I don't think you shame yourself into love, but I think what my journey through shame was it required me to love myself extensively. I didn't have a choice, because if I was going to get up out of there and I was going to be comfortable in my skin, I was going to be able to be loud and bold and proud about who I am, I was going to be able to live a free life, I had to give myself a bunch of love that I was not going to get from anybody else. And some of it was intentional, right? There's people who are homophobic who don't want to give me the love, sure. But even within the community, there were people who just did not know how to love you, right? Even if they wanted to, the upbringing is so convoluted and so interesting that you don't even have a lot of the tools to give me the love. And so I think through loving myself extensively, it allowed me to journey through the world, not perfectly, of course, but it allowed me to journey through the world with a layer of love on me that I think allowed me to land where I am now. I hope that makes sense, because it was really important to me that love wasn't unfamiliar, because for a good part of my life, genuine love felt unfamiliar, and some of that was because of me. It was like, stay back. And then some of it was other people just feeling like they had to withhold, whether because they assumed I was gay or they knew I was gay and didn't want to be but so close, or they saw my gay and it highlighted their inner gay, and then it became this whole like self-hate thing. And so it was really difficult, bar none, to be loved. And so I think that's a long way of me saying, yes, I think going through shame and these closets and these people you meet, blah, 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 definitely add some layer of understanding and journey and development. Necessary, I don't know, but for me, it allowed me the opportunity to really give myself some love, to the point where where love isn't the driver of the experience. I'm cool. Next question. So the question says, "Hi Obio, I hope this email finds you well. My question is around your mother and your current relationship with her. You stated that your relationship with your mother has been estranged, but are you close to her today? How does your dad manage the contention between the two of you?" Oh man, okay. I do not have a relationship with my mom. I don't intend to. It's funny though, but in the past year or so, maybe even a little bit less than a year actually, I've been saying that I'm open to the idea of a relationship possibly taking place. I'm not going to give it any effort. And I'm also not relying on that as a possibility. But I think if she was to, I'm trying to find pretty language. I'm going to give myself 3 more seconds to find some pretty language. I didn't find any. So if she would grow up, right, and take some accountability and be a mom, if you will, right, be an adult, be a parent, then I will be open to receive and hear that. I don't necessarily see that coming, but again, if that was to take place and she was to reach out or whatever and say a thing and kind of really want to step into that motherly space, there's room. But I'm again not going to go out of my way to create any. And with my dad, because my parents are no longer together, I don't think it's that heavy. But I do think, now that I'm in a serious relationship and we live together and I'm engaged and all the things, I do see a world where there was probably a version of my mom that my dad loved dearly and saw him doing life with and saw as the mother of his kids. And when it didn't necessarily go the way he wanted and she didn't show up how he desired her to, I do feel like he still has this level of allegiance to her, if you will. And I could see it becoming not necessarily a problem on a day-to-day basis for him, but I could see him feeling stuck sometimes. And so in those moments, I try my best to not dishonor myself and act like what she did was okay and how she behaves and behaved was okay. But I do try to help him understand that, yeah, this was the choice that you made and I want you to stand in your accountability. But also, I'm grown now. And while I don't have a relationship with my mom, I am doing well without one. I'm sure there's some blind spots, and not even say blind spots. I'm sure there's something that is prohibiting me from. I'm sure there's some parts of my heart maybe or access. I don't necessarily think that a love for your mom is innate, much like I don't think a love for your child is innate, because I don't necessarily consider my mom to love me, but or me to really love her, if I'm being honest. But I think there definitely probably is some stain there. I grew up in the same home with this person. I'm sure there's something that I am missing out on, or there's something I have to work harder to embody because of the lack of relationship. But again, I don't, let's say, fault my dad as an adult. I think my relationship with my dad is beautiful because we put work into our relationship and we communicate and we talk, and he's taking accountability for things, as have I. And I try my best not to hold my mom accountable or hold my dad accountable for my mom. You know what I mean? Hey, you chose a girl you liked and it didn't turn out the prettiest. Hey. So yeah. So this one says, "Good Thursday morning, Obio." Okay, Thursday morning. First, I want to say thank you for this opportunity, allowing your YouTube community to ask questions. Also, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for living your truth and authentic self. You got it, man. Question: if sexuality is instinctive, it's how we're wired, and I do believe it, why would a gay man say, if I was straight, I would marry her? It wouldn't be a thought for my straight mother to say, if I was gay. This really bothers me to my core to hear some black gay men, or they say that they're same gender loving, say that particular statement. I wish you nothing but the best and ultimately God's favor forever and always. I think a lot of times there's a bunch of reasons why people say stuff like that, right? I think people, bar none, tend to try to assimilate to a heteronormative reality, right? I think we just naturally think that we need to hold some space to think from the lens of straightness because that's what we tend to encounter. I also think there's some sort of normal that a lot of us are gunning for. And I think within that normal, you tend to create hypotheticals or create fantasy worlds, if you will, right? Like, if I was straight, I would be this. Or if I was a straight man, I probably would be. I used to say this about myself. I used to say, if I was a straight man, I'd be married with kids by now. I just feel like I would be like, you know, a good guy and blah, blah. But to your point, I have no idea what I would do if I was a straight man. Even when I find women attractive, it's still through the lens of a queer person, which is why I think back in the day when I would hang with my straight homies a little bit more, we had totally different tastes because what turns me on or turned me on about a woman is more like what would hype me about a woman versus turn me on about a woman. Does that make sense? Like, I'm looking at how tall that shoe is, how nasty that walk is, how high your confidence is. And maybe straight guys are too, but I'm not sexualizing you. I'm cool. You know what I'm saying? I'm more like, yes, mama, work it, do your thing. Versus like, damn, you know, I really want to, you know, and vice versa. If I see a guy, your give is nice or whatever the case may be. But when I look at my fiance, it's like, yeah. You know what I mean? This next question says, good morning, Obio. I hope all is well. My question for you is, maybe you already answered it and I happened to miss it when you said it during your video. And if you did, I apologize for asking again. You're all good. But besides the friend that held your hand out of the closet, would you say you had any people who you looked up to who helped you feel more comfortable being yourself and tapping into your fullest self? Also, do you think your journey to freedom will be different if you grew up in this current generation? If so, how? Thank you for always creating space and making this world so much better. You are appreciated. I appreciate you. There wasn't anybody that made me feel more comfortable being myself. Even my friend who walked me out of the closet, he highlighted the phobias, the shame, the self-hate within me more than he made me feel seen or comfortable to walk the walk, if that makes sense, right? It would be things like, I'm like, oh, I ain't never gonna do this. I ain't going to no gay club. I ain't da-da-da-da-da. And he'd be like, why? What's wrong with that? You know, and it would be like, oh, wait, what is wrong with that? Huh? And it was things like that that would help me to be like, oh, there's a lot of self-hate. There's a lot of inner stuff that needs to take place. But I don't know if I saw a person that was like, oh, I want to be like him, or he has a give that's similar to me, you know? Because I know you guys think I'm extroverted, but I'm actually not this extroverted. I like who I like, and if I really like you, let's have a time. But I don't know that if I felt seen by someone, I would be doing what I'm doing. I don't know that I would have a channel. You know what I'm saying? I think I was really led to do this because I was legit in my freedom sitting with myself like, dang, I don't know that I've felt seen by somebody for real. I don't know that I see a me in the current landscape. I remember I did Logo 30. This was Pride 2022 maybe. And I went and they asked me who was my like gay awakening. And I'm like, first of all, I'm black and I'm from an urban area. So it just didn't give, you know, a Britney Spears moment. And I think so much of that colored how I showed up because I didn't have any examples. I think even now when we think about non-monogamy or monogamy or, you know, going out or circuit or at home or guys trips or not, whatever it is, I think we're trying to create some sort of standard. You can deviate, but at least have some sort of standard, and it helps. I think sometimes I get frustrated about the pushback around standards, right? Like, I don't think we all have to do the same thing, no. But I also don't see the crime in giving people options, you know? And I really would like to see a world where we stop shaming people for how they do them. And I get why, because usually it ain't but 6 of us that get the chance to be in the spotlight. And so you want to, you know, create a spotlight that encompasses as many different mediums as possible. But if your give is this and your give is that, that's fine. I don't know. I just sometimes used to be like, dang, am I bugging? And maybe the answer is be an individual, sure. But when you're young, you don't have all the access to that. I think it's sometimes tough to say, just be yourself. Cool, but a few examples of self wouldn't hurt. Like, if I could get just a little bit of like, is myself like, monogamous and, dating individually and la 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 la, like, or is myself like non-monogamous and is there any signs of success and how are we measuring that success? And again, I think there are so many, the HIV/AIDS epidemic and based on homophobia that impede upon our ability to do these things. I'm not knocking that at all. I just hope that we get comfortable in getting some sort of standard happening so it doesn't make us feel so isolated, because sometimes it can feel isolating, like, dang, like, is this heteronormative? Is this just things that work? Or am I bugging? Am I chasing straightness, or am I just being myself? And even in masculinity, I think right now we're seeing so much of a trigger around masculinity. It's like with masculinity, there's this interrogation that I think could be beautiful, but sometimes it feels like, don't be. And if you are, you're trying to be straight. Versus, like, are you comfortable in your masculinity? Is it authentic to you? Do you feel free in it? And if so, rock. And if not, let's make some adjustments. Likewise, the femininity, and I think I would like to see us want to bloom more than shame or point the finger or suppress, because now we're just doing what other folks do, and that ain't gonna help nothing. There's the second part to your question. Oh, if I grew up in this generation, I think I'll be different. Again, I'm assuming big, but this generation feels very curious. And I feel like with our generation, at every step of the way, someone was zapping your curiosity. It was almost like being curious was wrong. But now it seems like a lot of people are interrogating their curiosities. What do I like? How do I want to show up? Is this who I am? How do I identify? Where do I want to go? Do I want to do this? Versus us, it was clear, like, you couldn't ask with so many questions. God forbid you question anything about religion. God forbid you want to be an entrepreneur. God forbid you want to wear something that's different. God forbid you want to color your hair. Like, it was just so many God forbids. And now it's like, who do I want to be? And you actually get to kind of pursue it. Of course, it's not everybody. Of course, it's not in every region. But I think this generation is going to do some beautiful work around what it means to be yourself and create some new norms. Even if the new norm ain't no norm, Oh my God, today. So I guess we're going to end on this question. It says, hi, Obio. I thought it would be fun to get some advice on this situation with this boy I like, because sometimes I don't know if I'm protecting my peace or pushing everyone away. A little backstory of my life. I'm freshly 19 and fresh out of high school. By societal standard, I guess I would be considered closeted. Mostly because when I realized in grade 8 during COVID lockdown that I was queer, I had what many did not, which is time away from society to think about the type of person I wanted to be. I should move the computer a little closer so I can really see, but hey. I decided that I was not going to date during the course of my high school career, not because I was queer, but mostly because I had felt it was something I was expected to do and not something I actually wanted. Looking back now, I guess my queerness did play a role because I never really liked the girls I dated in primary school in a romantic sense. I also never really came out. Okay, big rookie move, but my camera died. I know, rookie, I know. But I'm going to answer your question, so let's just talk, I think we were around the time of you being in primary school, right? And you didn't date because you were queer and you were realizing it, right? Okay, boom. It says, I also never really came out as queer to anyone at my high school because when you are perceived as straight and are allowed into straight men's spaces, you get a firsthand experience of how homophobic many people are behind closed doors. I would be lying, though, if I said the homophobia I heard was too bad, though. I come from South Africa where, in my opinion, I could always tell homophobia came from a place of ignorance and talking points heard on the internet rather than a true place of hate, especially among young boys. Still, I decided that being in the closet and not having to experience being othered by my peers would be an easier route to take, and so I chose exactly that. It just so happened that in my journey, I felt that even after high school, coming out would never be something I felt like I owed anyone or participated in, which sometimes I still feel is just an excuse I'm using to avoid the subject. But moving on, there's this boy, we will call him Troy. Come on, Troy. That came to my school in grade 8 From the jump, he was open about his bisexuality to everyone, which was cool, I guess, but still behind closed doors, I would hear shameful things about him by our friends. Subconsciously, this did, I guess, push me further into the closet because I saw firsthand how I would be treated by people I called my friends if I did come out. It's now post high school, and I'm trying my best to unlearn all these habits that I use to keep myself safe, like policing how I present myself and the things I participate in, like dating. Troy is now expressing some form of romantic feelings towards me in my DMs. Though something about Troy's character is quite repelling to me, sometimes I feel like I'm simply using that as an excuse to push him further away because I have become so used to rejecting any and all types of romantic attention I have received in the name of protecting myself. I guess my question is, should I give him a chance even though I feel it will not work in the end? A second question is, do you think I am using my disagreeing with coming out culture as an excuse to continue hiding myself and once again choosing what's easy? Also, I feel it's important to add that Troy is quite hypersexual in a way, and even the conversations I've had with him, he always approaches his interest in me as mostly sexual. I feel like if I do interact with him, I wouldn't be able to keep his attention because I'm not very open to giving my body to someone, especially for my first time, if I'm not completely in love with them. Oof. Okay, first, let's go ahead and ditch Troy. I think we've come to the conclusion that Troy is not for us, and that's okay. Two, I think there is a sense of dissonance between you and your sexuality. I think there does seem like a level of protection happening here, and rightfully so. We're not going to act dense like our sexuality isn't a thing that makes other people feel uncomfortable or have their own opinions of us or can possibly mistreat us because of our sexuality. But it does sound like you are using it not being anyone else's business and it kind of not being, culturally sound as a means to continue to hide who you are. I would suggest changing the language, right? And not so much needing to come out or not needing to come out as much as you need to be yourself. And don't focus so much on adding identity to your mouth as much as just adding your truth to it. So it's no longer suppressing those things that you want to do. It's no longer, avoiding people that you actually find yourself liking or wanting to be around, right? Let's start to get some language and some action behind just who we are and not necessarily how we identify. And I think sometimes we get so obsessed with trying to communicate who we are to people that don't understand us versus living in our truth and that being an attraction to people who do understand us, who don't require us to continuously come out or continuously identify and self-identify and explain and introduce and debate and all those things. You just find yourself around those who align, So yeah, I think my advice is to leave Troy alone. He sounds like it's a no. And spend more time just being yourself. And you'll find yourself chipping away at some of the things you thought you would never say, possibly going to places you thought you would never go, and just living a more full life because you're just being yourself and it's no more ambiguous language. You'll find yourself saying, yeah, I went on a date. And like, how was it? And you're like, well, he was cool. And you just find yourself saying he was cool. No need to necessarily declare that you are gay, right? Just, hey, he was cool, but not my type. And you move on, right? But you're able to talk freely because you're more focused on being who you are more so than you are, quote unquote, coming out. So yeah. All right, guys. I know you can't see me because my camera's dead, but I will see you guys next week and keep creating space. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I forgot I need to say this every episode. You can submit your questions to info@obiojones.com. Subject is IMOW question. It's in my own words question, but IMOW question, and then ask your question there and it will be answered on a future episode. All right, y'all. I will see you guys next week. Peace.